More about what looks like a big loss for high-speed rail in the federal budget and its now precarious future is New York's biggest booster of the president's ambitious transportation goals, Senator Malcolm Smith. Senator, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Liz. Good to be with you.
It's great to see you. The last time that we had a conversation, you were in New York City right after a federal summit, the first actually of a transportation committee on high-speed rail. It was a big deal, and you were very bullish about high-speed rail. Now it's not looking so fantastic for high-speed rail. It was zeroed out in this budget, and yet you remain optimistic. Because that is your way.
Well, that's my way, and also when you're close to the president's team and what's going on around the country. Obviously, it's a setback, to have the $2.5 billion that was lined out on this particular House Appropriation Committee, and they also took about $400 million out of the Florida money. But the reason why my optimism is so strong is, one, we still have the $160 million that we received. There's still much work in New York to be done. Our planning board still has to meet. At our recent budget hearing, Commissioner Gee, the Executive Commissioner for Transportation, indicated that the board will meet and complete its report on time, which is in 2012. Commissioner McDonnell, strong booster of high-speed rail infrastructure work, as well as our governor, who has obviously done a great job with the budget.
Well, yeah, I mean, he just asked for $517 million worth of federal funds for 8 high-speed rail projects in the state. These are funds, I mean, here's the problem, though, and you and I have discussed this a little bit, but it's quite clear that it's crystallizing at this point. Republican governors all across the nation are turning back these funds and saying, you know what, I don't want these. And it's all part of this sort of fiscal responsible movement by the House Republicans that trickles down to the states, if you will. And clearly the House Republicans drove the bus on these cuts. Paul Ryan is not going to want to put forward all sorts of funding, particularly when it's a signature project of President Obama in a re-election year.
Right. Well, it's obvious that everyone knows that this is a tremendous opportunity to create jobs and make our country and our state economically competitive. And so I don't want to believe that Republican governors are saying no to dampen his potential re-election bid because he creates a lot of jobs. However, I must say that the governor of Wisconsin has now asked for his money for high-speed rail when originally he said no. So he's seen the light. But let's remember, again, we
Scott
still
Walker.
have...
Interesting.
Yep, we still have a planning board that has to do its work. We have an EIS study that has to be done by 2012. So sometimes it's a blessing in disguise that we moved a little bit slower than Florida and California.
You could argue, but what about this argument? I mean, you talk about public-private partnership, and I know you want to get into that, but why not, as a devil's advocate kind of argument, say, okay, if you're so hot for high-speed rail, just get investors to do it and do it all privately?
Well, that's actually a potential. One of the things that our board is going to be charged with is determining exactly how do you finance high-speed rail. Do you actually finance it with government money on the state level? Or federal money? Do you finance it strictly with private pension money? I mean, we're actually looking at establishing an infrastructure bank. I've been working with Senator Gillibrand and Congressman Israel, infrastructure bank that is financed by private pensions. And so there are all different ways to finance it. When I was in China and what's going on in Europe, some of their work has been financed just strictly out of private money.
Well, the reason why I ask also is because most public infrastructure funds are paid for through bonds, and that means debt. And today the president, of course, talking about debt and the need to cut debt and reduce the state's debt and the nation's debt. Of course, the state is #1 in debt when you talk about New York and per capita. And so then you have this problem where, the Republicans again are saying, whoa, we want to actually we will not vote to increase the debt ceiling. We just don't want to do that, which of course is problematic when it comes to borrowing going forward.
Right. Well, I don't know necessarily if we will have the challenge on the debt ceiling in the state of New York.
No.
But I will tell you clearly, whether it's private investment, whether it is foreign investment, there is a lot of money available. For instance, the Carlyle Group, I know for a fact, has close to several $100 billion in resources available specifically for infrastructure work in addition to high-speed rail. Now, that's not to say that that's the organization that will finance high-speed rail in New York State. But there are financial resources available throughout the country and around the world. The question just becomes, how do you make a combination? You do have to have some government involvement from a regulatory standpoint, making sure that it is safe and the environmental protection issues are there.
Of course. But just, again, not because I want to put a kibosh on rail, and I think, trains are great, but on the flip side, why not reinvest in flight? I mean, we used to be able to fly a lot more places from Albany, and now you just can't anymore because of all the cutbacks there in that industry.
But there's also the cost of fuel. I mean, look at oil and gasoline prices. Oil a barrel today is almost $110, $115. There are estimates from economists that say they'll go up to almost $5 to $7 by the midsummer. People are not going to be moving in cars as they used to. So clearly the pathway for high-speed rail is still there. And you know, I'm not at all swayed by the fact that they decided to cut $2.5 billion out of this budget. Maybe it was fiscally prudent for the short term. But remember, this is a long-term project. This is not something that we expect to happen in 2 years. This is going to go on for 5, 10 to 15, 20 years. So that's why I remain bullish on this new transportation system.
You're headed to Washington.
I am headed to Washington, meeting with some of the cabinet members regarding transportation and elected officials. But that'll be another chapter. I don't want to negotiate.
Well, I'm just curious what you're hoping to get out of that exactly.
Well,
I mean, when we know from reports that, okay, and you just said they zeroed it out for 2011. And remember, when they passed this thing, or when they agreed on this thing, they haven't passed it yet. They're talking about the agreement not to shut down the federal government. They did pass a stopgap. We don't know, even some of the details were very murky. At first, there was cuts in high-speed rail. We didn't know how much they were, and then as it turns out, it's a lot more than we thought, but maybe it's not as bad. I mean, it's still pretty murky.
A lot of it is still being defined, but remember the president has a long-term commitment to high-speed rail of $53 billion. So going to Washington is going to not only talk to congressional leaders and cabinet members, but this is a national movement. I'm going to be joining some of my colleagues from around the country. As you know, I'm the co-chair of the National Council of State Legislators High-Speed Rail Working Group. So we have a long-term agenda, not only for high-speed rail, but infrastructure projects as well. And so perhaps when I come back, I'll update you on our accomplishments.
I'm just curious what you're hoping to get out of it.
I'm hoping to have a dialogue when I go there.
Okay, but you're not hoping to get any money out of it because there's obviously no money to be had.
I'll talk to you when I come back.
That's mysterious, Senator. Okay. I want to totally switch gears just for 1 minute before I let you go and get to Washington. And, you know, we've seen a development yesterday in your conference. Senator Krueger pleaded not guilty to federal corruption charges. And, you know, look, this is not good for the conference. The Republicans say it's a Democrat problem. The Democrats say it's an Albany problem in general. Where's the ethics bill?
Well, I believe the governor is going to bring forth the next bill. As I've said before, one of the things I regret not doing when I was majority leader is pushing the ethics bill that I championed for a couple of years. I am looking forward to him bringing it forward. I think it's important. I think the governor's on the right track. I like what he's doing. And so I'm hoping that before the end of the session, and I'm pretty sure that we'll have a decent ethics bill that will have full disclosure. You know me, I say just give legislators $120,000, no outside income, no Lulus, and we'll be done.
Yeah, the thing is, though, you could put all of the rules in the world, and I've argued this with any number of people who have been in this studio, on to the books. And people like Carl Krueger, who is alleged to have done a number of things, might not necessarily be following the rules. People who want to break the law are going to break the law. It doesn't matter what you do.
Well, I don't like to believe that. As far as I'm concerned, every legislator comes to the office with great intentions, good intentions, and their heart is in the right place. Maybe things don't go the way they planned it, but I'm an internal optimist, as you say, and I'm optimistic about the goodness in everyone.
So you actually believe that this isn't necessarily a Democrat problem or a Republican problem, it's just a people who fall off the wagon problem?
No, I think every time, this is changing times. I mean, access to information is different. I mean, the world is changing as we know it, and this is one of those evolving areas. Obviously, we have to now have stronger ethics bill because of the access to information and how it's transmitted, and I think we'll do so by the end of the session.
Okay, well, Senator, thanks very much. You'll be visiting with us, I'm sure, when you come back for Washington.
Maybe
you will tell me about this miracle money that materializes from
And
somewhere.
Congratulations to your 1 year.
Ah, thank you. I appreciate it.